is Ron Flatt. I'm the Deputy Director for Community Planning and Permitting, as well as the Chief Building Official for Boulder County. And today I'm serving as the Secretary for the Boulder County Board of Review. Welcome everyone here today. The first order of business will be a roll call. So just start with Michael Bailey. Here. Joseph Princeton. Here. Steve Titus. Here. Welcome. Okay. So we have a couple of things on the agenda today. It's been quite a while since we met last, with somebody on mute. And as a result, we have a little bit of old business to take care of. We have some meeting minutes from the last time we met, which was in April of 2022. So we'll have to review those minutes and get those minutes approved if we can. And then we also need to appoint a chair and a vice chair for the committee. Now, because this particular board doesn't meet super often, the particular roles of the chair and the vice chair are not particularly onerous. A lot of the basics, keeping the meeting stuff organized and keeping track of stuff meeting to meeting, falls to the secretary, Boulder County staff. So we have a little bit of continuity there because we do have these long periods of time where the board doesn't have any business to attend to. So we'll take care of that. And then there's also been some updates to the bylaws for the committee. So we'll ask you to take a look at those and hopefully get those to a point where you're comfortable approving them. And then followed by the order of business, which I think draws the most crowd here today, which is the introduction of the Boulder County Building Code amendments with our desire to adopt the 2021 version of the I-codes. Okay. So with that in mind, in terms of the folks out in the audience, this is very much an introductory meeting to the building code. And so because of that, and because we really didn't have any idea of how many people to expect today and trying to manage that, we're not actually going to take any comments today from the public. What we've done is we've set up an email. It's building code update, all one word, building code update at bouldercounty.gov. I'll put it up on the screen later in my presentation, but that's going to place where we're going to initially start collecting feedback. And then we'll also have a public meeting coming up. Like the first public meeting is going to be in person on November 19th. In the commissioner's hearing room at 4:30 p.m. So we'll put that information up on the screen. I would ask that if you just to be aware, we are recording this meeting. A copy of this recording will be posted, but the recording doesn't capture anything that's put in the chat. So if people put things in the chat, it's not going to actually make it to the public record, which is why we're asking everybody to use that email address if you have something that you want us to know about. Okay, so with that in mind, the first thing I'm hoping we can get to is a motion to nominate somebody as a chair and then followed by vice chair for the committee. I'll look for the committee for a motion.
Joseph was the chair currently, right?
Is that still the case, or was that for a limited term?
It's for a term of a year, and since we haven't had a hearing for over 2.
Okay.
Certainly. So do I have a?
So I make a motion that Joseph Prinster for the board chair.
Do we have a second for the motion? Second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. Motion carries. Thank you. And now we need a similar motion for vice chair. Now we need a volunteer. Motion. Yeah, I have a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Excellent. Well done. All right. Thank you. Okay, so then the next order of business is the meeting minutes from Wednesday, April 2nd, April 6th, 2022. This was a meeting we held primarily to update the ignition resistant requirements in wildfire zone 2. The meeting minutes were attached to the board packet. And I guess I'll just open and ask, is there any discussion about those meeting minutes? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve those minutes? A second? Excellent. Okay. And just as a reminder, on board, you could vote for, against, or abstain if you so choose. Just as a reminder out there. So do we have yes, please.
So I was at the meeting until 3:00 and
Yes.
is it okay to still vote
It is.
instead of abstain?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. So all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, excellent. Meeting minutes are approved. Well done. All right. We're moving right through this. All right. So the next item on the agenda is the bylaws. And I was hoping maybe you would introduce the updates to the bylaws.
Sure. Hi, everyone, I'm Kathy Gissel. I'm the Permit and License Operations Manager for CP&P. So we took the bylaws in front of the commissioners at a business meeting a couple weeks ago in order to get them updated. The main reason for it, well, there's a few main reasons for it, but first of all, they haven't been updated since 1998. So definitely wanted to get some things clarified in there, cleaned up, corrected. But one of the big reasons for doing it is ahead of the board of review meeting, to have you all look at them first and then go to the commissioners, which is the typical way, is that our board of review bylaws indicate that we need to have a 5-member board with a 4-person quorum. And as we have our entire board here, there's 3 of you. So only 3 of you doesn't make a quorum. So we wouldn't be able to move forward with our hearings and meetings that we need to do to be able to get the code adopted. So we needed to go in front of the board of county commissioners to ask them to allow us to revise our bylaws to have a 3-person board with a 2-person quorum. And we found that some of the reasons for why we've been unable to have enough people on the board, more than 3, is because we have these hearings and meetings so infrequently. So as we just approved the minutes, the last meeting we've had was in April of 2022. So it's been over 2.5 years since we've held a meeting. So it's not a very active board. And then there is also a requirement in there that people have to live in Boulder County to be able to be on the board. So we found that maybe being a little bit restrictive of us being able to get people on the board. So what we did is we updated the bylaws so that it is a 3-person board to 2-person quorum. We did increase the residency piece to the bylaws to allow anybody that has a business or works at a business that is in Boulder County that they could also apply to be on the board. And it would need to be a construction related field. So it's not just anybody in Boulder County that works or lives here. It would need to be somebody who has some experience or some expertise in the topics that this board does. So those are the 2 big things that we changed. The other things we did were listed land use was listed in there. Land use is no longer a department. We did a reorganization with the county back in 2020, right before COVID. So land use is no longer, it is now community planning and permitting. So we did update that in the bylaws to reflect the accurate name of the department. Also updated some code sections, building code section references in the bylaws that were outdated, not accurate in there any longer. And also updated to reflect the way we do business now. We're not mailing physical paper anymore, postcards out to people, and written documents. So everything is very digital now. So we just cleaned up that language so that it's more digital. Yeah, those are the main updates. Actually, those are the only updates that we did. But again, we went to the commissioners. They didn't have any issues with it. They did approve that the new bylaws, but we would also like to run these past you all and have you all discuss them and decide if you have any questions or any changes or anything that you guys would like to see.
Question about wording on, let's see, item 1C. I just think the wording's a little cumbersome, or of the newly added section, or have a construction field related business based out of Boulder County. What I think you mean is construction related or construction field business.
Yeah, and we do have that cleaned up in the actual final resolution. These were the comments, or this was the redlined version right before it went to the commissioners. So we did clean that language up.
When you say based out of Boulder County, that of course implies something different than based in Boulder County.
Yes.
I would think.
Yeah, the intention is that people who work in a business that's located in Boulder.
Yes.
Okay, so this isn't the final exact wording.
Yeah, the official resolution is going around the Board of County Commissioners right now for their signature as well.
And ultimately, they are the arbiters of the board, but we want to just make sure there wasn't any problems or objections identified by the board itself.
What was their logic for picking 3 members?
It had been 5, and we were having trouble maintaining a full board at 5. We wanted an odd number. So, and all the boards, I believe, are either 3 or 5 members. So, it's consistent with the rest of the council board.
Yeah, and it's state regulation that it needs to be either a 5 or a 3-person board.
A question on IE, the terms. Is the term supposed to be, so like in other things that I've been on, it will say, person X expires 2025, person Y 2026. Is there actually a list somewhere that's kept separately or not? Because it's important, I don't know. I
Yeah,
just wondered.
it is kept with the county, the commissioner's office.
Okay.
They have record of all of the members.
Are there term limits?
No.
Yeah, we've had some members who've been on the board for a long time previously.
Okay.
And we sort of encourage that. There is an advantage to having a little continuity.
The question I had, this one is just a tricky question because I don't know. On appeals, because there's, I do work here, but I never think about appealing anything, but do some of the requirements we have to make an appeal, are they too burdensome that people just don't appeal things, or is it just like everybody that loves the rules?
Yeah, so I mean, I think an appeal is sort of a measure of last resort. And the way things tend to work out, we tend to have a fair number of appeals on the land use code side of things, and fewer appeals, or very few appeals, on the building code side of things. I'm to be honest, as the building official, I work pretty hard to find reasonable compromises to people and their problems. So if somebody has, a valid claim to be made, I try to be sensitive to that and come to a conclusion, a resolution, without having to go through the bureaucratic process of an appeal. So I guess, we haven't had very many just needs that we've been reasonably successful in finding those reasonable compromises. But they have had some in the past. There have been places where they have not been able to resolve them and they have gone to appeals. Just not in a while. I've only, there haven't been that many people even who really argue that they want an appeal. Usually it gets resolved.
I'm sorry, I was realizing as you were talking about that, the meetings in the 1998 bylaws indicated that board of review hearings and meetings would be held every Thursday. I'm sorry, not every Thursday, but the 3rd Thursday of every month. So we did update that to be on an as needed basis only because we don't have appeals that come through very often, and code updates we only do every so often. So that was another update that I omitted from earlier. So just wanted to state that for the record.
And I think some of the appeals used to be more problematic before there was some additional latitude built into the ICC's code for what the building official can call a modification. So it used to be a little bit more rigid, and that made it so that a little bit harder for the building officials as they were sort of applying the rules as written. And so that flexibility, I think, also helps reduce the number of people who get to that spot where there's just a mess.
But if something like, for instance, if someone had a disagreement with your effort to resolve it, they could take it to this.
Yeah. But part of the limitation of the appeal is even through the appeal process, there can't be this board can't reduce the safety that's built into the code. And so if somebody's saying, I don't want to build my house with that structural requirement, I want an easier structural requirement, they want to appeal the decision that we had, they can't, even through the appeal process, you can't actually say, I want to build to a lower snow load. So that also limits it too.
Okay.
Do we need any formal motion on the bylaws?
Erica, can you speak to that? Do we need to have a formal motion on that?
Hi, this is Erica Rogers. We do need to have a motion on adopting the bylaws, yes. Although I think it says in the resolution that we were going to do that at oh, I just lost the rest of a second. Are we going to follow up with the public hearing, or is this that? Now I'm confused.
Erica, do you see any harm in having a formal vote?
Is this the time that we're adopting the bylaws right now?
Yes.
Okay, then yes, let's vote. Let's have a formal vote.
The board isn't really adopting the bylaws. Aren't they coming from the commissioners?
Yeah, I think the motion would be that you recommend approval of the bylaws. Right?
Or could it be that they support the approval by the county commissioners, since the county commissioners have already approved them?
Yeah.
Erica?
So this one's a little bit odd because normally the board, this board, the BOR, would recommend the change to the Board of County Commissioners, but because we didn't have a quorum, we had to send it to the county commissioners first. And so part of the resolution signed by the county commissioners says that following their approval, the Board of Review will adopt the bylaws in a public meeting. So that's what needs to happen. It's not the norm.
Okay. So we don't really have much choice in the matter. Is what they've given us.
I mean, unless you don't want to adopt them, it is definitely your choice as to adopt them or not adopt them.
If you don't adopt them, I'm not sure what happens next.
Yeah, no, really cause problems, yeah. But if the Board of Commissioners hasn't adopted it, is this premature? Should we be doing this at the next meeting?
So the commissioners did approve them on October 29th. It's just going around right now for signatures. Yeah, so they've already approved them. So we now just need you all to approve the.
And that was part of the compressed timeframe. So some people didn't really hear about this meeting with a lot of notice. And part of that was because we really didn't want to publicize the meeting until we knew we could hold it with a 3-person quorum. So it was a little bit of a hiccup in the process there until we got that sorted.
Yeah, it feels as though we've stepped into the realm of hell. There's splitting here. And
yeah,
we should just go forward and conquer.
Yeah. If you see your way clear to have such a motion, that would be well received.
I probably should approve them. Carry on the rest of them.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Right? Any opposed? Who carries? Thank you very much. Okay, so then the next piece of this moves to the Boulder County Building Code amendments and update. So let me just switch screens here. So start with this. Okay, so this has been a long time coming. So the Boulder County Building Code currently references the 2015 edition of the I-codes. We had that the ICC, the International Code Council, puts those out on a 3-year cycle. So since we adopted the 15, they've also published the 2018 version, the 2021 version, 2024 version is now out as well. We had been starting the process of moving to the 2018 when through a series of events, we ended up getting caught up into the COVID pandemic, and that set us back. And then we had Marshall Fire, and we've had a couple of other fire events. So all of those things have pulled resources away. So here we are, quite a bit down the road, where we are, I would say, a little late to the table to get our 2020, or get our code update. So we're going to skip the 18 entirely and move to the 2021 version is our intent here. Let me just switch. Oops. Sorry. I realized I'm on the so that's where we are. There's a lot here, and we had this project. There's a lot of pieces and parts that we were trying to navigate simultaneously. So we wanted to update to what a newer version of what the International Code Council has published. We've been participating in a couple of different regional groups that are focused on energy efficiency and sustainability issues. So the county has been participating for a number of years now in it was the Regional Building Policy Code Cohort, then became the Metropolitan Regional Building Cohort, and then the Colorado Energy Code Compliance Collaborative. This is a couple of different groups that have overlapping membership that are trying to not just push our codes forward, but do so in a more coordinated way. So we don't have vast discrepancies when you move from one community across the street to another community, and to try and just create as much alignment and cohesion as we could. We also have requirements that have now come down from the Colorado Energy Office for state level energy codes. And some of those are now incorporated into this draft that will be before you today. And we have clear direction that our leadership wants to see us maintain a leadership position with regards to energy efficiency and sustainability. So we want to be out on the front end of this, pushing to see how effectively we can maintain and pursue, reduce the harm from the built environment and balance these competing objectives. We do know that there is a direct trade-off between building safety and affordability, and this code strives to find a reasonable balance with that regard. That is tricky. There's going to be pros and cons. Obviously, that you can spend a lot of money to make structures foolproof, but that also comes at a cost, and that cost of affordability has real consequences, real world consequences for our residents. So we want to try to make sure we're balancing that. We also try to add some clarity where some of our code may have been a little bit confusing, or where people seem to have get tripped up. And we also try to put a formal document behind some of our county policies that we've been working with. There's also the what's called the Building Code Effectiveness Grading Schedule rating. And this is a national rating organization that looks at building jurisdictions throughout the country, looks at what codes you're using, how well informed staff is about those codes, how well trained and how credentialed staff is, what workload is for staff, and comes up with an overall rating. And this rating is very important because it's a basis of what many insurance companies use to assign to help evaluate the risk of home ownership and insurance policies. So to a large extent, everybody who has a home insurance policy in Boulder County has a piece of their policy premium that's based in some part on this rating schedule. And we've been in the top 15 or 20% of all communities nationally for a number of years. So we currently hold what's called a 3-3 rating, with 1 being the best and 10 being the worst. The Colorado average is a 5 in commercial and a 6 in residential, but we've been at that 3-3 spot for a while, and it's a pretty good spot to be. There's very few communities that get down to a 2 or 1, so we're pretty proud of that. But part of maintaining that is they do look in great detail at the specifics of what code we've adopted and how well we do in enforcing that. So part of this adoption process to make sure that we're in a position to maintain that rate. And then some of the goals that we had, we may not have achieved. So for instance, we did start out with the goal of simplifying and shortening our amendments. Whether or not it's simpler, I'm not sure. That'll remain to be seen. Certainly, it takes a little bit to get your head around it and get used to it. So it may ultimately, hopefully, be a little bit easier to use. But it certainly isn't any shorter. In fact, it's the text itself is a bit longer than it had been in previous years. So we didn't accomplish everything we were setting out to, but we did our best. And part of that process is also that because of state level accessibility requirements, taken some things that had been in graphical format and we've moved them into text format, and that kind of expanded things. We've also put things in places where you might logically look for them instead of finding them in very different sections. So there's a few pieces that may have a little redundancy, but at least if you're reading a section, you have a little bit more cohesion through that section. So again, those things made the document a little bit longer. Now, I will say that in today's world, we used to hand out bound copies of our code all day long down at the building counter. We don't do that anymore. Everybody's looking at our codes digitally. And so the fact that it actually is a longer text may not have any real downside in the practical world because people are using it digitally, and everything's indexed in a way that makes that a little bit more manageable. Okay, so I do want to just cover this just to make sure everyone is sort of on the same page about how these things work. So when we talk about our building code amendments, we're talking about managing the full suite of the building codes. So the International Code Council publishes quite a few books. Many of them we adopt. A few we do not. So you'll see in this graphic here, we don't, for instance, adopt the zoning code. The reason we don't is because everything that's useful that's contained within that book actually falls within our land use code. So we don't use this. We use our Boulder County land use code instead. The same goes for a number of these documents that we don't use. So for instance, we don't have the private sewage disposal code. Public health, Boulder County Public Health has a set of regulations that manage those issues. So we don't do that here. Our wildland urban interface code is encapsulated within the building code, and then there's elements of it that also fall within the land use code. So it's not one or the other. It's actually both of these codes working together that guide how you develop and then how you build. We don't adopt the property maintenance code at all. So for instance, we don't have any long-term regulation of rental housing, let's say like the way the city of Boulder does, where if you want to rent a house, you have to get a rental license. We only regulate short-term rentals. We don't regulate longer-term rentals. And then the fire code is adopted by each of the fire protection districts that exist within Boulder County. So that one's a little bit harder to manage because we have so many separate fire districts, and each one of those has their own adoption of the fire code, but Boulder County does not adopt the fire code. We work with them to coordinate and make sure we don't have conflicts with the fire codes, but each fire protection district adopts the fire code, county. Okay, so one of the things that I think has made this particular code adoption challenging is the fact that we're going 2 cycles. So what's in the amendments that we're proposing are what's changed for Boulder County, but the actual text of the books, the IRC, the IBC, they've made, the ICC has made quite a few edits and changes to those books. These are just titles from the International Code Council's bookstore. They publish each cycle what's called the significant changes books. They publish one for the IBC, the IRC, and a couple of the other books. They don't publish them for all of the books, but they publish them. And they're substantial volumes. They have quite a bit of content in it. But if you wanted to, for instance, compare in detail what's changed in the IBC between our 2015 version and the version before you today, you would actually have to read both the significant changes to the 2018 and then again to the 2021. So you'd have two steps that you would have to go if you really want to understand and trace through the history of all those changes. That does make it harder, and it's a reason why I think in the future we're going to be working maybe to not skip code cycles, because it does create this hiccup. So even though it took us quite a while to get to this adoption today, once we're through it, my goal will be to move in the not too distant future to the 2024 versions, which are starting to come out now. So a little bit of time on that, but it won't be as big of a gap, because it does create a little bit of challenge to try and understand everything that's changed in those code cycles. I will point out, just for everyone's education, so the Colorado chapter of the International Code Council puts on an educational institute the first week of March. Every year. It is they just released their offerings in terms of classes for this coming March. It's a great place to get up to speed on what's actually changed in these codes. So for instance, they have a whole day class on significant changes to the IRC. So they'll be focusing on the 2024 code. They try to stay right on top of it, but anyone who really wants to stay on top of what's going on with these codes, I recommend they reach out to the Colorado chapter and look at that training, because there's a lot of great value to be had there. Okay, so now just digging into the meat of it a little bit. So again, the goal for today was not to really have a deep, in-depth discussion about the content, but really just orientate people to what we have here. Where we will then, there'll be a copy of the actual text made available to everybody after this meeting. So I think it should be on the website. We're hoping by tomorrow it'll be live with the actual copy of the amendments and the text, and we'll make sure everybody can get a hold of that so that people can actually read it. But before you actually read it, I wanted to just sort of give a brief overview of where we are, because it is a little bit unwieldy in its current form. Right now, it's just really a long text document, and it's a little hard to manage visually. It hasn't had its final polish yet. But anyway, so there we are. So the first thing to make note of is that each of those books I showed you earlier, each one of those has a chapter 1 provisions where they talk about the administrative requirements of that code. What we've done is we have, and this is in keeping with our practice for many years now, we took all of the chapter 1s from all of the books we adopt and combined them to one chapter 1 for Boulder County that covers the scope and intent of all of those books. And so because the reason we do this, we end up having to make quite a few changes mostly due to the state that we're in and the way that it integrates with our other books and other documents and other codes in the county. So in terms of actual content that we've changed from what we're using now, the biggest changes are sort of just administrative stuff. We've updated the department name. We've clarified some places where the existing policy was confused. We have captured all the edits that the ICC made to those chapter 1 additions. So all the text where they may have reworded something, we've tried to capture all those things in there. We've also added what we're statutorily required to add through that House Bill 221362 for the all electric and solar ready codes. So that's chapter 1. And then we move on to the individual books. So in the IBC, we've updated, and I don't want to read all of these slides. This whole PowerPoint, I apologize, is terribly text heavy. So I'm sorry about that. But we did add of significance is a requirement for hail resistance to all new roofs. That's both residential and commercial. And we tried to clarify some design requirements for agricultural structures. We made some minor modifications to the ignition resistant requirements. Mostly what we were doing here was bringing into the IBC stuff that we had talked about for the IRC at the last meeting. When we updated those requirements, we clarified those are true for commercial buildings as well. And then we adopted some of the appendices that you see here. Okay. The IRC. So Boulder County spends a lot of time. Yeah, please.
Can you go back one slide?
Yeah.
It says added electrical and solar ready code on chapter 1. When you spoke, you said added all electric.
Sorry. Yes.
Is all electric?
It's not. It is about electric ready and solar ready. Yeah. Not all electric. Yeah. 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 There are pieces of this code that I'll mention further on that are working to incentivize all electric construction. But no, that House bill was requiring electric ready and solar ready.
Okay.
Yeah, I apologize for mistaking that. Okay, so in the IRC, again, we've done some reformatting. We've clarified how we deal with crawl space heights, because that's a spot where we've had a little bit of challenge with the building community, making sure everybody's on the same page about what is the crawl space and what isn't. We've amended the ignition resistant construction requirements a little bit. And then probably the biggest place where we've made changes is with Build Smart. And this bullet point is just sort of a highlight of what's in this new code. Build Smart has gone through a couple of significant changes over the years, and this, I would say, represents another significant change. So we have eliminated, for new home construction, all pathways except for the HERS ERI pathway. So we're saying that if you want to build a new house in Boulder County, you have to have an energy rating in order to build that new house. It just, we were finding that the other pathways were taking a lot of time and they weren't yielding as good of a house at the end of it. So we've said, let's just stick to the HERS ERI pathway. All new homes also must be Energy Star certified. Again, that's something we've been phasing in for a while. We knew we were going this direction when we introduced the Energy Star pathway for larger homes. And it's always been the intention that once the market got really comfortable with the Energy Star program, that we would phase that into all homes. And that's what we're proposing here. We also have ratcheted further all of our requirements based upon house size. So all homes that are larger than 1,500 feet of conditioned floor area must be zero energy ready certified, plus the HERS requirements in the table, and I'll show that in just a moment. We're also saying for homes larger than 3,000 square feet, they are going to also trigger these new embodied carbon construction requirements. Now, I'll put an asterisk on there, is that because these new embodied carbon requirements are new to the market, we want to make sure once we have gone through the approval process that we give the market time to learn about them, time to adjust, time to make sure that that people can actually get what they need from their suppliers to meet those requirements. So what we're proposing is that those requirements don't start until 1 year from the adoption date of the rest of the code. So that gives us an extra full calendar year to make sure we have a chance for education and outreach on the subject and make sure that everyone is comfortable with those requirements. We also have recommended for adoption a whole bunch of the appendices. One of the things you'll notice about the newer version of the IRC, that book has gotten bigger. And a big part of why it's bigger is just that there's a lot of appendices in that book. But we are recommending that a bunch of these appendices are adopted by Boulder County. Some of them are in keeping with what we've done before. Some are new. But I think they're all reasonable appendices, and they do provide value for the plan review process and the construction industry. And there's also some that are not part of the ICC, but come from other sources. So, for instance, the EV readiness the appendices, that's part of one of the code cohorts have come up with this, and that's where that text comes from. Okay, I want to talk about this for a moment because, again, this is a spot that I think is significant in terms of moving forward with the energy codes. So what you'll see is, and we've had previous versions and previous codes where we scale the target ERI or HERS score based upon house size. And what we've done is we've ratcheted that down further. So you can see here that the scale, what those numbers are, is quite a bit lower than where we've been previously. And we're also proposing a really important distinction between homes that are 100% electric and homes that still contain gas burning appliances. So the way this works is that a home must hit a maximum HERS without the effect of renewable energy of 50 for all of these homes. And 50 is an achievable number. It's a pretty aggressive number, but it's achievable in this marketplace. We see lots and lots of homes do it. You have to build a pretty good envelope. It's not a perfect envelope, but a pretty good envelope to get to a HERS 50 without renewables. And if you're 100% electric, you can stop there. If, however, you decide you want to have combustion appliances, then your HERS score becomes more aggressive again, based upon house size, with ultimately every new home that's over 2,500 square foot needing to hit a HERS 0 with the effect of that renewable generation. So again, if you don't have any combustion appliances, you can stop right there at 50, but you have to go further if you have combustion. We do make a provision in there. Go ahead, I see your question. Yes.
Does that include like a on-demand hot water heater? I mean, that's a combustion fire.
If it's a combustion on-demand water heater, yes, it would. So that would count as a fuel burning appliance.
Right. So there's really because the electric option for that is really not an option.
It would be a heat pump water heater. Heat pump water heater. And the reason we're doing this, so there's a huge push statewide to incentivize electrification. And so these ideas are only a little bit ahead of what eventually is going to be required by the state because, and we're not quite there yet, but there's a huge push to electrify because what's happening is our electric grid statewide is becoming very clean, and the requirements for the utilities is a tremendous amount of decarbonization, but it doesn't impact what the combustion that's happening at the individual at the individual parcel level. And so the goal is that every agency that's working on this is pushing to get to greater levels of electrification with less and less combustion appliances at all in new construction. There is a provision in here because we do recognize that we have some people who live up at higher elevations where they don't have a reliable electric grid and they have power outages. And so the provision here is for above 7,000 feet in elevation, you can have a backup propane system that would allow you to deal with those sorts of power outages. But again, if you want to have combustion, you still can. You just need to offset and add renewable energies to get to those HERS targets. So you still can put in combustion appliances as long as you're offsetting it with PV. So that's the trade-off we're presenting. Yeah, please.
Maybe this isn't the right time.
No, go, please.
So I have 9.6, just for example, I have 9.6 kW on my house.
Mhm.
And Estes is a very, I will just say it, they're anti-solar
Mhm.
and they won't let me have any more.
Yeah.
And I can't meet that because they want to talk about how I might burn up their transformer by putting more than 10 kW on my roof. And I think there's places that can't meet that last requirement and need a generator with more than 100 gallons of propane. Because in the winter you have shade and you have snow, like I had no power for 5 days generated. Now, and 100-gallon tank's gonna run out.
So again, this would be for new construction.
I understand,
So-
but the same thing at my house could occur in a new house. I'm just saying, as an example, it could be better insulated, it probably have better windows. It could have battery backup, which I don't have, but I'm just thinking that that is a little bit restrictive for an off-grid house. The 100-gallon for sure.
The 100-gallon backup.
Yeah, really restrictive.
Well, I mean, I think that's important to talk through. If we think we need to, that's a starting point for the conversation. If the consensus is that 100-gallon backup is too small of a backup, then we can make that adjustment for
And
sure.
I don't know if other power suppliers, I mean, if you're in Excel, you're in good shape, that's what it sounds like. But if there's other power companies, this is paying, but.
Yeah.
And that's a part of the county up
Yeah,
in the
agreed.
northwest.
Yeah, no, we need to make sure we write a code that works for the full county. And so that's something that's worthwhile to talk through
Forget
and
it, just change.
get those adjustments. There's also work that's happening at the state level to try and make sure that we push all the utilities to
accommodate
greater levels of electrification, because that's the direction
Oh,
that the
that'd be
state's
good.
going. Yeah.
They're just not under state rule because they're governed by the county, by the city. So they're not under
Municipal,
PC.
so-
Yeah, they're not under PC, so that adds to their pain in the butt.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, I want to talk about this just a little bit, just to introduce this concept, because again, this is probably the place in the code that's going to be the newest for anyone who's looking at it. And this is talking about the embodied carbon requirements. So again, this will be triggered for the larger houses, and it won't have any effect until a year after the rest of the code is done. But the way we are proposing it is we are proposing that we regulate concrete and steel, only those two materials, because that's where the biggest bang for the buck is. And that's where it's also easiest to sort of quantify, and the market is a little further ahead. These concepts are being adopted by several other jurisdictions and around the state. They are derived from the NBI, National Building Institute. They are they have put forth a draft of text that these concepts come from. That's what been adopted to. That's been adopted by City Boulder, for instance, has adopted it, and it's a couple other places who are working on this. So the idea being that if you are building a bigger house and you want to build and your concrete for that house will have to comply with the restrictions of this table. And I think once we get a little further ahead and the batch plants are used to seeing this, it'll be fairly straightforward for it. But right now, when you call batch plant, they're not really sure what you mean by these things. So there is some work that needs to happen to make sure we can implement this in a smooth way. But that's the basic idea, is that you would specify when you order your concrete that you have to have, you're looking for low carbon concrete.
Who's testing this sort of stuff?
There would be documentation that would come from the batch plants, essentially from the manufacturer with statements about their carbon content.
This is also the part that will be delayed a year.
Yeah.
The adoption date.
And we're really deliberately delaying it because there is this issue that the market is just a little unfamiliar with this. We've been talking about it in one way or another for well over a decade, but it's taken a long time to get to the point where we feel like it really could be implemented.
How many other counties or cities are actually living with this?
Right now, I think the city of Boulder might be the only one that's actually in place to enforce. But there's a bunch of other jurisdictions that are working on finding ways to incorporate
A
this.
bunch of other, is Denver doing this? I mean, I guess the reason I'm asking this question is if we're a lone ranger out there and we're having to get concrete that meets this demand.
That's right. Yeah, I think the way that it has to work is that it needs to be at a scale where the batch plants can switch over because they do have to change a little bit about how they do things in their mix to make it work. So there needs to be a critical mass to allow that to happen. I think we're there, but
Are big communities, Colorado Springs, Denver?
I know Denver's working on it. I'm not exactly sure where they are.
Are these limits straight out of the code, or are adjustments being made to that?
These limits are straight out of the MBI, and they are similar to what's being proposed at the state level. So the state of Colorado has worked on their model. What do they call it? The model
Code.
model green code, and in that is the same chart.
So there'd be consistency in that.
That's the intent.
It's a bad plans to deliver all over.
I'm just curious, I know nothing about it. What is like, if you just took 2,500 PSI concrete, what is it for low carbon?
That's a good question. It's a good question. I think, to be honest, I think part of the issue is that right now there isn't great documentation, right? So you might not be able to get from the local batch plant. They might not know what it is coming out of their facility.
But the concrete industry is making strides. They introduced the IO cement, things that are lower.
That's right.
Lower carbon. I've just never seen them categorized by those numbers.
Yeah, I think the industry has been talking about this for a long time. Yeah, so it shouldn't be a surprise to them.
And this will be what we can see tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. And then moving on with the IRC. So we have added some clarifications to the ignition resistant requirements. We've renumbered everything and moved things around a little bit so that next time we go to adopt, it's going to be a little easier to integrate our codes with what comes out of the IRC. We don't have to renumber and modify everything. We've clarified some existing policies, especially with regards to plastics for skylights and solar tubes. Again, just clarified some of the existing underfloor protections and so forth. Okay.
I was reading that first line about which zone. So are we only, the last time we met, the ignition resistant requirements and a lot of those kind of post-martial fire requirements were mostly in the wildfire zone 1.
Yes, there's still a distinction between zone 1 and zone 2. One of the things that we've also sort of talked about is calling them, referring to East County as West County. So that's, yeah.
So this is
very much consistent with that. And those maps, those maps are not quite in the draft that you'll be getting. The new maps are identical to the old maps, with the one exception is being that just north of Lyons, we're realigning our separation between zone 1 and 2 based upon instead of the road that was there before, we're realigning it with the boundary of the fire protection districts up there. So it'll be a slight shift north of Lyons, but the rest of the dividing line of the county is going to remain where it is. There are, just so everyone's aware, there are state level wildfire code requirements that'll be coming. So they exist as a draft now. They're not settled on those yet, but as soon as those get completed, we will have a very short period of time where we will be compelled to adopt those new restrictions unless ours are more restrictive. So those will be coming down the pipeline here relatively quickly.
And how do our current restrictions, our current code shape up against where it's
We're pretty close. We're pretty close. Again, because they haven't settled on the final draft yet, I'm not quite sure where it'll land. But right now, our restrictions are pretty close to what the state has been talking about. Major. That's right. That's right. So there'll be some adjustments. I think one of the places where there's definitely a little bit of a difference being discussed is what is the distance immediately around a structure that must be ignition resistant material or versus vegetative material, where the lines are. So that's a place where I think we could have to make some adjustments.
And what you see there is, so Boulder County went originally to like non-combustible deck construction, and they backed off from it in the past to just the decking.
Yeah.
Is like, what are, we just wait and read it when we see it? Is that the best thing? Or?
Yeah, I think so. I think again, I don't want to get too deep in details into that, and especially because I don't have anyone from the wildfire team here in the meeting today. So when we get to discussing that, I want to have somebody.
So wildfire has input on this. So
yes,
they're not going to have these separate, probably cynical, unwritten rules.
yeah. So
that are out there.
So just to be clear, so the wildfire has two pieces of it that show up in two different codes. So we have the existing resistant material requirements of the structure and the area immediately around the structure that are within the building code, and that's what we have in the IRC amendments. But then there's also wildfire mitigation requirements that are within the land use code that are not part of this document, and so
it could still affect the building construction.
Yes, yeah. So that we try to integrate these things together as best we can, but we've been working with our wildfire team as best we can to make these things align with each other. So in addition to those books that we've already talked about, we also have updates to the existing building code, the mechanical code, the plumbing code, the fuel gas code. A vast majority of this is just trying to align things so that they were read as a code. Have the right triggers of the scope and intent to make sure we can use these codes as they were intended. I guess I will point to the fuel gas code where we did make a change. We specifically prohibited the unvented unit heaters. So this is something that we just feel is dangerous. It's in the code, it's allowed in the code, but we just want to disallow it within Boulder County as having an unvented unit heater within a dwelling. So we specifically clarified that in the fuel gas code. But the rest of the stuff is just trying to align with what we sort of have to do. Specifically, things like the plumbing code, where we are really beholden to what the state plumbing board requires, and we simply have to follow their instructions. We have a few places in our code we have some greater detail, in which case the more specific requirements would hold, and the same is true for the state plumbing board. They have some places where they say most things that are a little more specific, and we are beholden to them there. And then finally, we have the National Electric Code. We're not proposing any changes besides we just adopt what the Colorado State Electrical Board requires. We don't do any amendments to that code. And then we get to the International Energy Conservation Code. This is another place where we've made a fair number of changes, trying to align the provisions with the recommendations of the various code cohorts, as well as adopt the solar ready, EV ready, and so forth requirements. So there are a fair number of changes here. It's not as deep as what you see in changes in terms of the residential requirements, but we try to bring those things up. I would say the one thing I will call attention to is that right now and since 20, I think maybe since 2009, we have required energy offsets for fuel burning appliances that are outdoors. So if you have a patio heater or a snow melt system, in the residential market, we've been requiring direct energy offsets for those. We've now extended those to commercial projects as well. So if you have an exterior decorative fireplace in a commercial project, you will need to do energy offsets for that fireplace. That's something that is new in this proposal. Okay. The IGCC has had quite a bit of change to it since we last adopted it. So this is now a book that is no longer being directly managed by the International Code Council. It's now an ANSI process, so it's kind of a different game. But we are adopting it and recommended the adoption of it. It will remain as a 25,000 square foot trigger is what we've had before, and largely we're accepting it sort of as published. We haven't used this code as it currently stands very often because we don't have a lot of new projects that trigger it. It's a substantial undertaking to use this code, but it does push these larger projects to be far more sustainable than they might otherwise. The pool and spa code, we're not really making any significant changes to. We're just adopting it and integrating it within the Boulder County Code. And then we've added from the state, the model electric ready and solar ready code. And we've just integrated that into our book, into our amendments. Okay, so next steps, future meetings, feedback. And I guess the real highlight of this is that email address on the bottom there. That's really something I want people to pay attention to is making sure that if you have comments or questions or want to raise issues, that email address is where we're gathering and collecting all of that. So I saw that it looks like there was a couple of items that comments people might have put in the chat while I was talking. I saw them just sort of flop up as pop-ups. We can have a chance to look at them. And because they're in the chat, they don't show up in the public record. So if you want, you have a comment, you want something for us to know about, please send us an email to that email address. That's the best way to get your feedback into this process. The next public, yeah, please.
Is it by the public meeting or is it got a deadline of? It should
No, that email box is open now and remain live and active and paying attention to it right up until we complete the adoption process. And it's also a much better place to send emails than sending them to me directly, where it gets subsumed with the rest of our normal business. This is an email box that we monitored by several folks, so we'll make sure we don't miss things. So on November 19th, we have an in-person event in the Commissioners' hearing room across the way. That'll be from 4:30 to 6. I encourage anyone to come and share talks. This is going to be an informal event in the sense that we're really hoping to just have a conversation about it and talk about what's going on. So I encourage everyone who's interested in talking about this to come to that. And that's again only in person. And then on December 5th, this board will meet again. That'll be a study session where we can talk about feedback that anyone has from the process, what edits or thoughts you have, what places you see that we've gotten things right, and places where you think maybe we've gotten some things wrong. We can talk about that then.
Will there be public input at that session?
I think we're going to try to set that up as a Zoom meeting. So one of the downsides of using the team interface that we use today is it's very unwieldy to allow online comments and manage that. So we're hoping that our December 5th meeting will go to a Zoom format, and then we can actually manage the process of allowing comments and public input at that time. But again, if you send emails before that, that can all be incorporated into that. So again, I think that's going to be the best tool. But the December 5th meeting, we're hoping to take public comment there as well. That meeting will be followed by another meeting on December 19th. I'm hoping that by that point, we can have a version of the code that everyone is comfortable recommending to move forward with. And that will have public comment for sure at that meeting. That'll be a formal hearing, meaning that we're hoping that that's a point where you as the board of review can, again, vote to make a formal recommendation to the county commissioners regarding the adoption of the amendments as we're proposing. And then assuming that all works as planned, we'll have on January 16th, a meeting of the county commissioners. That will again be a public hearing with full public comments available to everybody. And assuming that they are comfortable moving forward with this code, then approve it at that date, then we think we can hit a target effective date for this code of March 31st, 2025. I will finally point to a couple of additional resources. So if at this link for the ICC at the top, that's a place we can go and actually see the full text of the 2021 codes. So that's all online, so everyone can get a hold of that. And then I'll also point people to the Colorado Energy Office. They have a toolkit at their website, and that has copies of the state energy codes, the model electric code, the draft, the model green code, opportunities to look for feedback on those codes. So that's another really useful resource. And again, this it's just a really good place to see what's going on there. With that, that can move back to the previous slide with the dates. That concludes my prepared remarks for today. I open it up if the board has any questions or comments. I know it's a lot. There's a lot here. It took staff quite a while to get to this point. It's a big document. There's a lot in it. So I really do recognize that and appreciate your time and taking a look at these things. And again, we will share with you whatever feedback we get from the public so that you can see how people are seeing this and where people might have identified things that they need further attention.
And you're going to send a link to the draft out in the near future?
Yeah, we'll have it posted on our on the board review webpage, as well as our Boulder County building update as well.
And the board will also get an email directly.
So has there been any public comment on these changes yet?
It hasn't been really.
Hasn't been published.
This is it's unveiling. So
And so you guys, just so I understand, you guys came here expecting what?
To add input.
Okay.
Because there was really nothing in your email that said anything. So I assume you guys are gonna adopt something today that I've never heard of before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a ton of stuff in there. My question to the board is, when do us as the public facing, you guys get to see what you're proposing
yeah.
in time, so we have more than 2 days
Right.
to have comments?
Yeah.
And then in the future also,
Yeah.
in the future also, in these other meetings, are we gonna have voice, or is it a meeting like this where you're gonna sit down and just read through emails all night long?
Yeah. So yeah, I apologize for that. So the draft that we proposed after this meeting, we'll post it, and then everybody will have to be able to see the full text that we're proposing.
And that's likely tomorrow.
We'll hope that'll be up by.
Will be any,
We can see that where?
It'll be on the website for, I guess,
Yes, it'll be on our board of review.
You go back to.
Yeah, our board of review webpage, as well as our Boulder County building amendment webpage.
Can you pull up?
Is there,
Board review?
you had the address for the board review?
Email address or
Yeah,
anything?
an email address, I can take a picture or something.
I think it's on your slide, Ron.
It's on the last slide there.
There we go.
It's the top one, right?
No.
No.
It's not, it's not.
Yeah, so that's the ICC, so that's ICC.
Go ahead and drop the web addresses in our chat.
To continue to answer your question, though, I think one of the things that's been missing is you've got the dual mandate of affordability on the front of this, as you alluded to on your first page. One of the things that's been missing in all of the code updates so far has been, what's the impact on affordability? We, after the Marshall Fire, there were a number of codes that were ratified. There was no, I know Dale had gone out and publicly said, oh, it's going to be about $2,000 a home and therefore nominal. And it turned out in a public forum, one challenge on that, because we knew that that was not the case. It was probably a good 10 to 20x that. He said, well, we actually didn't have any data on it. And so I'm concerned is, we're still building an UBC as a result of the Marshall Fire. These are, people have been put in a situation. And a lot of these costs are going to have to be borne by people who are already in a stress situation. I don't know, are the concrete changes going to require a special concrete that's 50% more expensive? Are there testing regimens on that thing? I'm assuming you want compression testing done on them. Is there anything to that? There's, those are the sorts of things. So I think as we roll these out, one of the big elements of public input's got to be pick some model home sizes and actually get some research, have staff go back and research what's the economic impact of doing this, because some of these testing procedures and things like that have been onerously expensive. And there's been no accommodation made for any of that.
So this is all stuff that we're gonna get to talk about
Yes.
and discuss at the next meeting on
Yes.
the 5th,
Correct.
on December 5th.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the board review webpage right here. And this is where we will post copies of this of the draft.
That's under the building, right?
So if you scroll down just a little bit, Ron, under public meetings, go right where it says building materials or meeting materials, in that board of review meeting agenda and packet area, that's where these will be added.
But it's public meetings and hearing is a link on the top bar. Is that what you're saying? How'd you get that?
To be honest, I just Googled Boulder County Board of Review.
Okay.
Sure, that's the fastest way.
You can go to the website and just type in Board of Review in the search criteria and it'll come up too.
Michelle Hubner, Boulder County staff. I just wanted to also add, when you have a building permit issued, the code does not change. You're building under that code you applied your building permit for. Okay.
There's still, we've still got 32 lots that have not got permits against them. And a big part of it has been cost.
32 lots in the entire county or?
32 in UBC. So this, it's unincorporated Boulder County has 157
Yeah.
burn lots, 32 of which is, I think 32 of the 35 in the totality of the Marshall Fire radius of 1,250 houses. 32 of them are in UBC. And that's where we're starting to run into some big challenges.
If anyone has trouble next week finding a copy of this or finding a way to it, if you just send an email to that same email address, that building code update, we'll respond with the links right to it. So if anyone has trouble getting a hold of documents.
Question. So did I hear this right? Build front will be gone,
Well, it's still built smart, but we're modifying.
but like, what happens on additions? So there's like hers rate.
Yeah, so
Where do additions change significantly or something from what
we
they are
did
now?
not make a lot of changes to.
So it's still the checklist of.
Yeah,
Build smart?
yeah, it's largely the same as it's been.
We're not doing hers on existing houses.
There'll still be the HERS pathway depending on the size of the addition. But yeah.
That would be an option.
Is there, are you guys gonna implement a distinct, line between new construction and residential, existing? Especially towards mandating for, the new green?
Yeah, I mean, the construction requirements for new construction will be more stringent
Right,
than what happens.
right. My only concern is that it's already starting to happen to where a lot of those restrictions in new building are starting to get passed down to us guys that work in residential remodeling and that kind of thing. And the only answer I can get from authority is the code is the code. You know what I mean? No offense.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, hopefully we're going to end up with a code that works. Right. I mean,
And that,
I
this is
think
gonna be part of that
that's
implementation.
yeah, all of us need a code that works, right? So we have these policy objectives that we're trying to achieve, but the reality is that my staff is focused on taking the building permits, reviewing them for code compliance, and keeping the building industry moving forward with meeting the needs of our community for construction projects. And so we need a code that is achievable and enforceable and works. So it doesn't do us any good if we don't have that.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's a prime importance to us.
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Again, this was today's meeting was really intended to just lay out the plan, introduce the process, and the meat of the work remains in front of us.
I would bring up two things that I guess I deal with on a regular basis, and I call them gaps between Boulder County departments. One is that it would be sheds. So if it's 120 square feet or less, we don't need a permit. It says it right in there, right? And planning, then suddenly what says every approval they get, you got to get a permit for this, and there's nothing about resistant requirements on that shed, but then they're going to apply it when planning reviews it. And you got suddenly all these people got sheds, they bought wherever, and they got to recite them, pull them off or whatever. It seems like there's inconsistency in the two departments that Dale runs that ought to figure it out.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is a little confusing is the way that on a given parcel, you can have a number of unpermitted structure and then it stops. And you have to have future what would be unpermitted structures need permits. And I do think that people get a little tripped up about that for sure.
Even if you have the number that you have, the 1, the 2, or 3, depending on your lot size. When you go to planning, they suddenly count those as residential square footage. And it is an issue, I guess, is what I'd say, an inconsistency in the county. Like a lot of sheds get put in the setback, and then they're going to be a problem, but because they're unpermitted, but that's a logical spot on a small property, that's where they'll put it. The second one is I think there's gaps between wildfire and the building code. So it seems like, I'll give it one specific example. Now suddenly, because you're within 50 feet of a property line, you have to have tempered glass on the outside pane. Is that only going to live like in some unwritten fire code requirement? And I may be wrong, but I've never seen wildfire write their stuff down. And it seems to, like, they don't have a board when I've asked. They seem to just evolve it by, I would say, by the fire catastrophe in America. And it seems like it ought to be written down and be consistent with what the building code says.
Yeah, I think
one kind of group.
yeah, I think that our update helps that to some extent by we clarify those requirements. But there are places with through the site plan review process where the wildfire team reviews a parcel and says that there's a higher than normal or extreme risk of this parcel, and they will layer on some additional wildfire ignition resistant requirements for those structures through that planning process. And that is a little separate from what happens in the building code.
Yeah, my concern, to be clear, is not about the building department. It's about this unregulated version of one person making an assessment out in the wild and suddenly changing things from what other neighbors have been doing, okay, in a recent, it's inconsistent, is what I'd say, and unwritten. And I bring it up because, I don't know, Dale's probably not in the meeting, but I think it's a gap between these two departments or sub-departments, whatever they are here, that would be desirable to get on the same page.
And some of these things might also get resolved with the state level wildfire code too. So that I think also might help us create a little greater consistency and alignment across everything. So just thank you. Okay. With that, I guess I'll look for a motion to adjourn the meeting. I really do appreciate everyone's time here today. I know some folks really wanted to give us a little more feedback, and I apologize that we couldn't make that happen today. But I do encourage everybody to reach out with that email and participate in some of the forthcoming meetings. We'll have greater opportunity for public input. So thank you. With that,
And that input, like, so the meeting's scheduled to 5:30, is there not the ability to, like, the people that are, I see pictures of here, like these two gentlemen got to speak, maybe they have more, is it not the ability to get some of that now, or is that not permitted?
Erica, can you help us think about that?
She's not
Thanks, Mr. McPhee, that
You're muted, Erica, if you're speaking.
if we don't have the actual proposed,
Hi, sorry about that.
Okay.
So is the question whether you can take public comment now?
I want to make sure we do this properly. I'm not sure if there's time for everybody who's online to give full public comment. And I don't really have a way to see all of that. I guess I wanted to just, make sure if we let some people start talking, we don't get ourselves into trouble with not having time for everybody to put in their 2 cents.
I'm just trying to think of the best way to do this. I think that, how was this hearing noticed? Let me just see. We didn't notice it as a public hearing, correct?
No, it was a meeting, not a hearing.
Okay. I don't see any harm if you want to take public comment, but the caveat I would say is when we do notice there's a public meeting and that at the hearing, that's actually this board recommending the adoption or the non-adoption to the Board of County Commissioners, then I would want to open it up again once everybody's had a chance to review it. So I'm not sure if it will save time in that sense, if that's the reasoning, but if it's just wanting to hear what people have to say, then I think it's fine to do that. As long as everyone has a chance to comment again, once the draft has been circulated and at that next hearing.
Okay, well, I guess with that in mind, maybe if I could just ask those online with a show of hands, if you are interested in just making a comment right now, if you just raise your hand, so we have some idea of how many people might be interested. So it looks like there's only one. So I think that makes it pretty straightforward. Erin, if you could share your thoughts.
I'm just curious if there's going to be any specifications about in-ground swimming pools and spas with the gas-fired heaters and the energy offsets, because we already offset the energy from the gas fire, and if it's going to be all electric, what are the specifications on that?
So it's the all exterior fuel consuming devices will still require offsets. We're not changing that. So if you are using an all electric appliance, the offset doesn't change. So essentially the heating pool will still require offsets as it does now.
Okay, so that won't change if we have the gas-fired heater.
That's correct. Because it's not part of the same building permit as the house.
Cool. That was all I needed to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do either of you have any additional?
I've got a million questions, but they can away. Don't make sense.
Okay, you know, I am, like, as I said, expecting, once people have that chance to look at the actual proposed draft, that's really when the questions will start.
Well, I'm hoping most of the questions get answered, but I'll see the post draft.
Yes.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, that would be even better. Yeah. Okay, so, with that in mind, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Question to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Wonderful. All right, thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it.
I just want to shake your hand quick.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully you